Welcome to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell, my co-host and the founder and CEO of Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day. After a few weeks away, Mark is back. And we've got a great conversation for you on things to think about when selling based on value. If you've ever struggled with a really price-driven customer, or maybe you just aren't sure how to position your value in a conversation, you should really enjoy this episode. There's so much good stuff here that I don't want to spoil anything. So let's head over to the show. All right, so to get this conversation started, we are talking about selling based on value. And so I think sometimes people have lots of different definitions for value. So just to get everybody on the same page before we get too far into our discussion, Mark, how do you define value when it comes to the sales world?
Well, that is a great question, and you're correct. There are a lot of different definitions, and in some cases it's getting overdone. So I'm hoping that this will bring a little bit of a unique perspective to it in our conversation here today. But from my perspective, by definition, value is, what you perceive you get over what you pay, right? So do you feel justified for the amount of money you're spending, versus what you're receiving in services, goods, product, et cetera, what does that look like for you? And that's a very individual case, with each person. So in the sales process, when we're positioning our value, and this is how we go about doing things, this is what we teach our clients to do, it's about identifying what is that personal value to that person who is going to write you a check, or to that company who is going to write you a check, because at the end of the day, it's an individual journey, individual conversation with each person.
Excellent. And so I just want to reiterate that. So you said value is what I get versus what I pay. And so I think that sounds probably pretty similar to some people as the definition of return on investment. And so I'm curious, do you define return on investment the same way you define value, or is there a little bit of a minutia difference for return on investment?
I mean, ROI is one way where we just look at the sheer numbers. Right. I mean, usually, most people, I would venture to bet, if you're looking at your return on investment, we're looking at dollars. Did I get the money or some sort of tangible value that affects my business back by making this investment? Whether I'm buying goods, services, et cetera, doesn't matter. Value has this, to me, has this emotional aspect to it, right? Like, I can define the value of somebody in my life, even though there's no monetary component to it, right? Does that make sense? Where, I know, somebody's adding value to my life by just being in their space, or by just being around them, or just by being in a coaching conversation with them, or whatever. If people knew what I paid for my coaches, most people will be appalled by that. However, in the first year that I paid my coach, we tripled that number in total revenue. So there's the ROI, right? So we got the 3x return on investment, looking at it that way. And I'm not the same person today that I was back then when I started working with that coach. And when I get to go and be in the physical presence with that coach and the other people, say in my business mastermind, as an example, this is one that I go through a lot with people as I'm kind of explaining value. The value of having a network of people, but that I can access at any time, that I can get questions, go to with my questions at any time, people who hold me accountable for the things that I say I'm going to do. That's what these guys are for. And so do I pay a lot of money for that? Sure. But what's the value of being able to be around, a group of badass people that want to push you to a higher level, that want to see the best version of you show up always, that want to help that person show up? I mean, you can't really place a monetary value on presence on date night. Right. But because, those people who, yes, I pay money to be a part of this particular program, but they have helped push this, this next best version of Mark to always come forward and to continue to keep growing. And so like my wife and I had an incredible date night last night. It was a ton of fun. I can't put a price tag on 3 hours of like extreme connectedness over a date. Like, I don't know how you equate that. Like, that doesn't equate into dollars and cents. It's worth way more than I pay, for the services I get in my business mastermind, which is effectively what has given me help me instill the habits that create somebody who can show up and be present on date night.
Right. And I think that's a really important thing to really emphasize as we're talking about value is, yes, price is part of it and money is part of it, but it's only part of the equation. And so you have to really start to look more at the what do I get side of that. And I think we're going to talk more as we dive into this about, what happens when you're dealing with really price-driven customers and how that might be showing up for you or steps that you might be able to take. But I think if we fall into the trap as sellers of saying that, price is the only thing that matters, we're missing a huge part of the conversation because to your point, there's the emotional value, what I get. Some of the things that we also talk about with a lot of our customers are, what are the other places that you can gain that value? So is it in service? Is it in expertise? Are you super reliable? And that's really, really something a customer wants. Or are you super convenient, right? There are a lot of these intangibles that if you're ignoring them and only looking at the price sticker on any given product, service, you're really missing part of that conversation. So Mark, I want to kind of build on that. So we've defined value as what I get versus what I pay. So to you then, what does it mean to really be more a value-driven seller or someone who is selling based on value versus more of a price-driven seller? And I know maybe that sounds really obvious, but I think there's some nuance to that.
Yeah. Well, so part of the problem when people think about becoming a value-driven seller, and I think a lot of sales managers are getting this wrong in particular, because they themselves are probably not good value sellers. They were good salespeople. They were good hustlers who are now in that sales leadership role. I say that as a blanket statement. If that offended you, that's not about you. If it didn't offend you, it probably was. So, I want to dive into the nuance around positioning the value, right? So rather than thinking about selling value, I want you to start thinking about positioning your value. Okay. So if I'm selling the value of the product, right, I'm talking features and benefits and how that pays off on your farm, purpose, process, payoff, like all that stuff. So what I'm talking about when I'm positioning my value is the full package. Right. So if we go back to basic sales training 101, what we teach is people make change in their business and in life for 3 reasons. Those are pain, fear, and opportunity. They will, when there's an opportunity that's enticing enough, sometimes people will go after it and they're willing to invest money or time or whatever in order to, capitalize on the opportunity. When somebody is scared about something potentially happening, they may be willing to make an investment, right? It is a certainty that I'm going to die someday and I don't know when that is. And so I buy life insurance now, right? So we know like that's a fear-driven behavior. Okay. We can also say, oh, it's an opportunity. It's product. No, you're going to die and you don't know when. You're buying out of fear, like, because you're afraid of who's going to take care of your family when you're not there to provide an income and support and all that stuff. So at least whatever, if I kill over on the way home today, like my family gets $1 million check in a couple weeks. Go to town, guys. Like, do whatever you want with it.
Now everyone knows that you're worth that much, Dad. So be careful who's coming for you.
That's exactly. I think that probably balances out to more than my actual net worth right now. So, but the other reason people make changes out of when it hurts, right? It hurts, and so now I need to make an investment. Usually, the hurting comes because we delayed when there was opportunity. We delayed when it wasn't scary enough, and so now it's like, now it really hurts and I need to make a decision. So from a buying perspective, it's actually better to make decisions before it hurts. But let's flip over to the sales side of things. So knowing those 3 things, knowing that people will make change for 3 reasons, my definition of a good salesperson is somebody who can effectively identify through good questions and good questioning and managing the conversation that they're in with a prospective client is somebody who can identify the opportunities, who can identify the fear, and who can identify the pain that person is experiencing. And in some cases, we're not going to get into this today, like you can actually insinuate pain, right? Or actually make people afraid of the pain to get them to move faster today. We do this all the time with like discount deals and deadlines and, discount, the things where you got to make a decision today or the deal goes away, that kind of stuff. But the reality is like to me, somebody who can position the value dives in and gets into questions. And so even if the buyer comes off right away, so, what are you selling today and how much does it cost? That's great. Mr. Customer, I understand that, price is a consideration for everybody at the end of the day. Like, we don't sell anything here that's not worth what we think, what we charge for it. We don't sell anything of value that doesn't cost money. And I understand that, price is always going to be a consideration. What I find is most people have 1 to 2 or maybe even 3 other things they consider in addition to price. I'm curious, what are those, 2 or 3 things for you? And that's when you as a salesperson need to shut up and just let them talk, even if it gets painfully quiet for a while, because now they're thinking like, oh shit, like he just burst my bubble. Like, think about it this way. One of the ways that that buyers will beat the salesperson always is by trying to get you stuck on price, because it's like we're playing a game. And in that negotiation game, as long as I can get you stuck on price, I can whittle down your value and try to get you to give up a couple dollars here and there. And that's what we do. And we all do it. So, don't get mad when somebody does it to you. So here's the take that I have on helping you through that situation. When they ask for your price, they ask what it costs, whatever. Whether you give them the price up front or not, that becomes up to you. We all have a different little method that we might use in that scenario. And I would say even especially if they get you to give up your price early on in the conversation, I would come back and say, hey, I know, price is going to be a consideration. I don't even know where I rank amongst my competition, to be really honest with you. But most people have 1 or 2 other pieces to consider. Right. One or 2 other things that they consider. What are those top 2 things, top couple things for you? I'm talking with new teeth today, apparently. And so when you start to take it and make it about something other than price. And so you can literally summarize the conversation and say, hey, if I'm close and you have these other 2 things and I'm able to help you with these other 2 things that are really important to you, are we talking, potentially doing business together? We use that as a trial close. Now we're moving the ball forward, and it's not just about price. We've made it about price and, right? Price and. Everybody should like literally say to themselves out loud in your car while you're listening to this right now, price and whatever else it is, right? For me, it's like, do you make my life easier? Do you give me more freedom? I will spend more money with you, as long as that gives me more freedom, right? Every day of the week. That gives me more time with my kids. That gives me more time with my wife, more freedom to focus on being strategic in my business. And you've got a product that helps me in my business to do that. Cool. Let's find a way to pay for it. Right. So here's a promo and a preview of something coming out from MJST. We'll be launching the Thrive Today app sometime this summer. It will be live and you can download it onto your phone and be part of the community. And here's what's cool about that. Like, what we see, one of the things that allows us to do is to have access to more people while leveraging our time better. Right. So I'm willing to spend a fairly decent amount of money on that app in order to grow the Thrive Today community, to grow the MJST community, to be able to access our customers differently and actually probably touch people more frequently through the app. As opposed to just waiting for the live event or just waiting for the coaching call. The idea is like, we want to invade your life and be in your ear and be in your face like every day. So this allows us to do that without having to invest a whole great big bunch more of our time. And so does it make sense for us to spend the money on that app to get that value for our business? Absolutely. So, I want to bring it back to one other thing, around positioning value. Okay. I started to talk about questions. I play this game with myself anytime I go into a sales scenario, anytime I go into a call, and I do this every time I go, especially when I go my favorite place is when I have an entire executive team. But even if I just have one person, my favorite thing to do a game I call hide and seek with questions. Okay. And it's not that I'm hiding anything from them, but what I'm trying to do is hide anything about my product, my process, or my price until I know as much as I possibly can about what's going on in their organization. Where are the opportunities? What is the pain? And what are they afraid of? And so I will literally go, if I have an hour meeting, my goal is to get to 45 minutes into that meeting before I have to talk about who is Mark Jewell, where did I come from, what is MJST, how do we work with our clients. I literally will try to save that for the last 15 minutes. If I do a good job and I'm able to just ask questions constantly and get more and more information and dive into things with them, now all of a sudden when I get to that last 45 minutes, the only thing that I tell them about my products, my processes, and my price is exactly what aligns with the needs that they have just declared to me while they answer my questions. There's an old sales trainer in the industry who taught a lot of us this way back when. It basically said, don't tell them anything that you can ask them, right? So we front load the sales conversation with a boatload of questions, like more questions than you think is even feasible, more questions than you think is than you should. And you just continue to ask and dive deep as you can. And then when you get to the bottom of you can't come up with any more questions, like, hey, do you guys want me to talk about how some of our stuff works and maybe how it addresses some of the pain points that you just brought up? Now I'm only giving them the solutions that address their pain and their fear. And if there's time, the opportunity, because that's the weakest motivator. Pain's the biggest motivator. And the next thing you know, we're writing a proposal. And I know I'm cocky about this. I know I'm arrogant, but I mean, we rarely come out of a sales meeting where that happens when we don't get to write a proposal. And most of the time, as long as we do a good job on the proposal, we close it. So that's really how we position the value of us, because now they realize we're not just selling them training, because we're not. We want to actually solve real problems. And if you just buy me at a transactional level, then yeah, that's what you'll get. You'll get training. Right? If you want to buy me at an emotional level, which is where I really understand you and I really understand your business and really understand the pain, cool. Now we will customize our solutions to help you fix that. And when we do that, we've got customers for life.
And I want to put a pin in that language you just used, transactional type interaction. But before I do that, one kind of example that I think ties into that is almost from the opposite, right? So on our end, you do a really good job of asking those questions to uncover that need. So then you get to the proposal and the buy-in stage, and it makes those processes a little easier.
Mm-hmm.
I know at one point we had a client who was actually experiencing kind of the opposite problem, where she felt she was doing really good in some of the sales calls, the conversations, and she was getting to the proposal section of the process, and that's where it was falling apart. So over and over, she's like, I put a proposal in front of somebody and they didn't buy it. I put a proposal in front of somebody and they didn't say yes, right? And the reason was that every time she put a proposal in front of them, the customer or the prospect would come back and say, well, yeah, but it's missing this piece, or yeah, but it's missing that piece. And what she was learning is it felt like the conversations were going really well, but the reality is there was really important questions that were getting left out, which made it fail at the proposal level. So if you can get really good at asking those questions early on, to your point, it makes the later stages of the sales process go a lot smoother, because basically what you've done is you've allowed them to open the door and you just walk right through, versus let me throw something up against the door. Let me turn every single knob with my proposal and see if one of them sticks. Now I know that I'm at the right door and all I need to do is take advantage of it. So I just, that's a really important point to drive home about questions.
Yeah. Well, and let's just dig into that a little bit. So let's just say you're listening to this and you're that newer seller, maybe you're in their first 5 years and you aren't having as much success as you'd like, because it feels like you keep getting stuck, or you're missing something in your proposals, or, the competition comes in and they got something new and shiny that just sort of trumps you. These kind of things happen all the time. And so first of all, when that happens, don't take it personal. Okay. You literally don't. I mean, it's a learning process. Okay, whatever. It sucks when you lose, right? I had a sparring match yesterday afternoon and I got kicked in the face and I got kicked in the liver and I may possibly have broken my foot and all that sucks, but I learned a ton, right? It hurts sometimes to learn things and just know that that's all good. Okay. Like it's not a bad thing when you lose, because now as long as you take time to reflect on it and debrief, like, okay, well, what did I learn by getting kicked in the face just now? Now you've got something to go on. It's like, oh, well, if I just don't do this, or like don't drop my gloves next time. And in the sales scenario, what that particular coaching client was learning was, she's very good in conversation. She's easy to talk to, right? I mean, that's part of her gift. That's part of her natural aura. And she's new. And so she probably doesn't know yet what some of the questions are that she needs to ask to get them to tell you everything. And guys, that's just part of the learning process. Like, be okay with that. Like I didn't know all the questions in the beginning, right? This is our ability to do what we do now from a sales standpoint is, quite frankly, like a lot of years, and so it just takes time. I think you can expedite that. Like if you implement some of what we're talking about, like you don't have to wait until you're 37 almost. I'm not there yet, but it will be in a month or in a couple weeks. But you don't have to wait until you're, whatever my age to be able to do it. It's just a matter of like really tuning into the process and not being reactive in that situation, and actually controlling the conversation. So what happens for a lot of young people, number one, we lose control. Okay, we lose control of the conversation, and they kind of get us up against the ropes a little bit. They get our backs against the wall, and they start pinning us down with questions, and it's usually about product. And so now I've got to rely on knowledge that I may or may not have about the features and benefits of a product. If you're having that type of conversation, if you're debating product all day long about why yours is better than theirs, you're going to lose. You're never going to have enough margin to make money. Right? You might move some product because you get lucky and you've got the right one that day, but you are not positioning value, right? All you're doing is it's a transactional piece about that particular product or service. So what happens, and this is what we train people to do, is to quite literally throw the first punch when you get out of your truck at the farm gate or go into the boardroom or wherever it is that you're selling, and start to being the first one to ask questions. Even when they try to take control of the meeting, that's fine. It should be like a 60-40 where 40% they get to drive, 60% you drive. If you do that, you'll get to ask more questions and you'll have more information. Here's the other thing. A lot of people start asking questions around like, well, what are you putting on that acre? Or what did you plant over there? Or who are you buying from now? And things like that. And that's not really a good strategy either. Like, at the end of the day, they're buying from somebody else if they're not currently a client. Okay, like that is what it is. So don't even make it about that, because now all of a sudden it's being about what somebody else does. We want to position your value, not how your value replaces their value, because whoever they're buying from now may be their best friend from high school. Right? And your conversation today is not a short-term sale. It is a long-term play, because eventually their friend from high school is going to die or retire, but they're going to still be in business. And so you need to be there to sweep that up when, when it comes your direction, or when that door opens, or they have a generational transfer of the business or the farm or the whatever in the family. And so now you're in position. So, it's a matter of being in control of the conversation and then listening to those answers that they give you, and then going one level deeper. Tell me more about that. Dig into that for me. Help me understand this a little bit more, right? So really showing your genuine interest. And even if we don't come away with a sale that day or a proposal that day, we've shown them that we really give a shit and that we really care, and that we're like, the old saying is they don't care what you know until they know how much you care. So first we establish that. And now, like, once we know a bunch about their situation, and maybe we start to learn about some of their pain, now we start to learn about some of that value. Now we can position our features, benefits, products, services, etc. But here's where a lot of young people kind of go off the rails, is we lose control of the conversation and we never get there. Third way that young people, or new people in sales, doesn't have to be young, get lost, is we hear the first fear or pain or opportunity. Usually they'll share their opportunities first, because that's the easy thing. Everybody gets excited about that. It's easier to talk about. We get so excited about that's what we end up writing a proposal for, and we end up missing all of the other details. So the most powerful question that you can ask in any situation like that is, once they give you something, is, got that, I wrote that down, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. What else? It's literally 2 words to change your entire sales business. What else? What else is there? And anytime you do that, like, you're like, oh crap, like, he's not just going to go for this, for the softball that I just threw, or she's not going to just go for this thing. Like, no, what else is there? What else is there? And there's a book written back in the 70s by a guy by the name of Brian Tracy, who still is, like a Stone Age trainer, I'm literally like surprised he's alive. But he was the one I learned a lot about selling from in the beginning when I was just getting going. And he wrote a book called Psychology of Selling that I read, and I think you might even be able to go to YouTube, and the audiobook is online for free, and that's where I got it. I don't even own a physical copy, but I learned, listened to Psychology of Selling, and what he says is when you continue to ask what else, you might get 5 or 6 or 7 even what else is deep into the conversation, and like every time you say, tell me more about that. Okay, what else is there? When you get to the last what else, when they can't come up with anything else, that was probably the most important one. That's the one you want to go to work on. That's the one you want to focus on. And when you do that, you miss fewer of those details. So just like the client that we were talking about before, right? When you don't have as much confidence, it's kind of hard sometimes to be digging for those, like that what else. Like you start to tell the story in the back of your mind, like, oh, this person's going to get annoyed with me. I keep asking for more, right? They're going to da. No, just shut up, bullshit. Like keep asking the questions. And like if they shut you down, they shut you down, right? But just follow your process. You fight your fight, don't fight theirs.
Yeah, and I want to tack onto that because I think that is a lot of what happens. We're not asking the right questions. We're not asking enough questions. We're giving up too early. Whatever that is. One of the other things that I've been seeing lately is the deer in the headlights when the question does come back to you, right? So yes, you want to control whatever 60% of that conversation. You want to be the ones asking the question, but we're naive if we don't think that the customer is going to not going to ask a question at some point in time. But what I'm seeing a lot, especially with those who are early on in their career, is either they ask a question or they say no, and it's like that deer in the headlights. Crap, what do I do now? And from the conversations I've been having, a lot of the reason the deer in the headlights comes is because they didn't actually prepare to hear no or to get a question sent back their way.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
or especially the question of what is the price, right? Like, cause that is, a first instinct. And so one of the things I just want to kind of add to your list of things to consider is that you should just come to terms with the fact that someone's going to ask for the price and someone's going to say no, and you better have something in your back pocket to use.
Right.
Because the deer in the headlights comes when you realize, oh, I had this whole speech worked out and now they have changed the course. So those are 2 things that you should they're going to happen at some point in time. So sort of having a way to get yourself out of those situations. No never means no. And to your earlier kind of framework, there are ways to get yourself out of the what is the price conversation, but it takes kind of thinking and preparing ahead of time, which I also know not all salespeople are doing that pre-call prep work. So it's just something
almost none of them are doing the pre-call prep work.
So even
I want to hit on that just really quick. So, I mean, me, like I'm not usually the most prepared guy going into any general situation, and I really sound like kind of an arrogant prick on this podcast today, but my self-confidence is so high. Like I know I can talk my way out of anything or into anything. That's literally like my belief in myself. And, that's like self-confidence is on my strength scope. And it's one of those things that's like, it fires me up to be able to continue to grow it. Okay. But here's the thing. When you get into that situation, you get to develop some self-confidence over time by fielding some of those questions. Like, they're going to come at you, that they're coming. Okay. So, I mean, this is like when we're in training mode now, but when the price conversation comes up, they're going to ask you price. You have 2 options. You're like, that I'm not going to sell you anything of value that doesn't have a cost associated with it. Right, Mr. Buyer? Right. Like I will mess with them a little bit. And I'm not going to sell you something that's not, and I'm not the cheapest and I'm not the most expensive. How's that sound? Okay. And then I got to transition. I have to pivot and say, hey, in addition to price, I know that there's some other things that you've got to be considering when it comes to figuring out who you buy from. What else is there? Right. So that's how I wrestle back, control that. That's how I do it. That's how I wrestle back, control the conversation. It doesn't save you from having a deer in the headlights look. Everybody's new at something once. My big analogy right now is this Muay Thai fight that I'm getting ready to go do in June. As we record this, it's the middle of May. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like I talk a big game out here. Like I've never been yesterday in this sparring session, fighting somebody full contact who is far better than I am and far more experienced, even though he's half my flipping age. I've never felt so novice at anything and so completely defeated. Okay. So just know, so I've been there in sales. I was there and was unable to position my value effectively because, quite frankly, I hadn't taken enough licks yet. But I also hadn't taken enough swings, right? And so if you want to get better faster, and let's be honest, you want to make more money, you want more recognition, you want more significance, you want the things that you're after in your career, then how you add value to your company to get that more money, to get that more recognition, is you go sell shit. Like you find a way to get it done, which means taking more swings. The more swings you take now, today, the faster you elevate your level of experience, period. Those people that are 10, 15 years in, who are not producing the way that they could produce, are simply not taking enough at-bats. That's it. There's one thing that you can do, and that's go find more people to talk to. I don't care if you got to drive to them, run internet marketing ads to get to them, social media, whatever it takes, right? Ask for referrals. You do whatever it takes to get those in there. And day one, when I started this company, there was nothing. I literally had less than nothing. And so what did I have to do? I had to pick up the phone and dial the thing and just get the experience. And I got told no. That happened. So that's one thing I really wanted to just nail on, is you get to go get some experience. You're going to have the deer in the headlights look. That just means you don't have enough experience yet. Right? I got kicked in the face yesterday and it stunned me, and I was like, time out. I don't know what the is going on. I don't know what I'm doing now. Right. And I literally did. I didn't know how to respond to that. Number one, because I'm not supposed to be getting kicked in the head, because that doesn't happen in my division. So mentally I wasn't ready for it. All of a sudden I'm leveled up. Right. But it's for me, it's such an analogy for life, because you're going to get into those situations. And so rather than be dejected about it, whatever, you can get disappointed for 5 seconds and 5 minutes, that you need to feel it out. Don't stuff the emotion away. That's not healthy either. Feel it out and work through it, but then go back and say, okay, well, what did I learn from that? Right? Why did I have the deer in the headlights look? Did that really cost me the deal? Or did I pivot and come back and, with some smart aleck remark, like Mark would give, and say, well, I'm not going to sell you anything of value, that doesn't cost a little bit of money, right? I'll do that just to mess with them, just to kind of see, okay, are they real? Is this really just about price, or what else is there? Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox about that for a moment.
Well, and just kind of finish that thought. The other thing that we've been talking a lot about lately too is, so part of it is the reflection. What did I learn from that experience? Mm-hmm. Part of it, and we'll talk about this on a later podcast. I don't want to dive way too far down this train, but
foreshadowing
this road. But it is almost a celebration of all right, I had my first experience of somebody telling me no, or I had my first experience of somebody telling me or treating me not great, or, I had my first experience of getting that question and not being ready for it. Guess what? I never have to have the first experience of that again. I've got it out of the way. So I know how to, even if I still don't get it perfect the next time, it's still not the first time, because you should hopefully learn something from the previous experience. And so there's almost a celebration of, all right, I got that first experience out of the way. The next one will be easier.
Yes, absolutely.
Moment. So I want to go back, Mark. You've mentioned the word transactional a couple of times, and there are 3 other words that I'd like you to dig into. So let's take a step back again. We've kind of gone down a road of some selling ideas, but I want to come back to some foundational principles, concepts for just a second, and talk to me about the 4 levels of value and what this means for sellers.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the things that we teach at our classroom event, and that we support in our coaching process with our clients. And we really believe gives you kind of a very tangible way to maybe put into buckets the different things that you and your company can do for your customers. And so, and Amanda, remind me to come back after this, because I have this new transactional emotional thing that even simplifies this a little bit, but let's get the 4 buckets out first. So guys, as you're thinking about different types of value, a lot of people just they say value, and we add value, and we do value, and we have value, and that's what we do to earn our business. So this will give you something a little bit more tangible. Okay. So at the base level, the base level of value is what we call transactional. Okay. So transactional level value is basically you have a product or service, and I need that, and I give you money. There's very little emotion involved here, right? This is just I need some new sunglasses right now because these ones are all scuffed up. So I'm going to roll into H&M. I found a pair they're at H&M and they're $10. Okay. There's no, I have no special affinity for H&M. It doesn't change my life when I go to H&M. The people are nice there. I wear some of the clothes from there, but not a lot of them. It's clothing. They have the sunglasses that I need that fit my head that don't give me headaches. That is just right. So a little bit of a value add in the sunglasses, but not in H&M. They just carry that. And so that's transactional. The next is what we call expected, right? And the analogy that I always use is, 10, 15 years ago, if you were going to a hotel at that point, you would it was like a big bonus if they had high-speed internet or Wi-Fi, right? And so today, I go to a hotel and I expect to not only have Wi-Fi, but probably to be able to stream Netflix or videos on Facebook, right? Or my YouTube. Right? I expect to be able to stream that. And in some cases, they get you, right? You got to pay a little bit extra to get the super high speed so that you can, but you're willing to pay it because there's enough value in that added service, right? And that added speed. And so that's what we call value add. People are willing to spend more or spend a little bit more in order to have value add. So that's the next level. So, your transactional is just, money for products and services. Your expected is basically what you expect to get out of that transaction. Okay. And you're just meeting the expected level of value, nothing special, no big bells or whistles, no bonuses, no discounts, just expect to get what you're paying. Value add is, until, and even for most companies, but until recently, even in my life, that was the top of the mountain. That was you have all these value added things. And if you were to just kind of, while you're driving along or running or whatever you're doing while you're listening to this podcast right now, think about what are all the things that your company do right now to add value to your customers. What does that look like? Right. And we ask this question in every single live event that we do. And a lot of people will say things like, we have delivery, we have service, we have product knowledge, we have, a special program that gives us, gives people VIP access, things like that. Right. I mean, we have all of our information on the website, we have databases, we have an app. Right? There's all these different things that you can say that are value added that provide a little bit more value to your customers. And this is where most people stop thinking because we don't think about what else is there, because it's the nature of business for far too long, even though we say, and a lot of our customers obviously are in agribusiness, we say it's a relationship driven industry, but we don't really sell on relationship. We often are selling on transaction, expected value, and value add. And so what we define as the next level, and the level that you should be shooting for with at least a segment of your customers. It may not be possible with every single one, but at least a good segment of those highest paying, highest margin customers in your business is what we call partnership level value. And when you're in partnership, it means literally they need you and you need them. That is, by definition, that is a partnership. We benefit from being in relationship with one another. And I feel good paying money to you, even though maybe it may cost me more to do business with you. But I feel good spending that money with you because I know that you're going to deliver, maybe even over deliver on services. We just got an email, last week, from Russ on this, something like this within their company. One of their customers who's working with one of his salespeople literally said, even if your price was $5 more per ton or whatever the unit was, even if you were $5 higher than my competition per unit, I would still go with you, right? Because it's worth it, because you know my business, you understand me, you know my pains, you know my fears. You're always there. Your people are attentive to me. I feel, and I read the email. I was like, I think the customer literally said, like, I feel taken care of. Right. And that's what happens when you're in partnership. You're neighbors, right? You're in community with that person. And so where most people go off the rails is we just try to trade products for services or trade products and services for money. And that's, and at that point, yeah, it's all about money. And your people are always going to be price buyers. But here's the thing most people don't consider, that you can actually train your customer to respect your value. Right? Not by how much you know. That's all good. And that's table stakes. It's a given. You need, even if you're new, like, you need to be getting to know your products. You need to be getting to know what makes those products work, whether it's in the, the feed side of things, or in the agronomy side of things, or in the business side of things, or whatever. Like, you need to be learning at least how that works over time. But what you really get is, like, you understand them, their business, their pains, their fears, the growth, the things that they're going through. So that's the difference between transactional all the way up to partnership level value. So transactional, expected value add, and then partnership is what we're really shooting for with as many clients as possible. Here's one last thing. I was just reading about this in an HBR article last week, where a lot of companies, tend to go off the rails, especially if they're trying to create a new product or service. And they think that they're making their customer's life so much better. Is when I go out and I provide them this, what we call, just the transaction, right? So basically the transaction is what we perceive that person needs. And the example in the HBR article was actually an agricultural example from Europe, where some company was trying to create an online platform where farmers in remote areas could access their products. And so historically they had to call in and wait on a service line to be able to order the products and have them shipped out. So they were creating this online platform to help facilitate the transaction. Right? And it makes sense. Obviously we're doing that kind of stuff in the US. That stuff's popping up all over the place. And so it made sense, and it failed miserably. Why did it fail miserably? Because those people who live in those remote areas are freaking lonely, and they love to have people to talk to. So it wasn't just about the transaction and getting the product that they need. Those farmers loved being able to call in and have somebody. So what the company did, they literally restructured their whole process, and created an even better one that didn't look exactly like what they set out to create, because I'm sure they were trying to create this off of volume and efficiency and all those things. But now they still have their online platform that's available and accessible the way I understood the article, but they now have a line and a dedicated customer service person who's available to each one of those customers to speak the language that they speak and all those things. So that was the learning was there's a difference between helping somebody facilitate a transaction and then being available emotionally. And so there's the transactional layer and the emotional layer. And I was thinking, even in our business, I was thinking about that, Amanda, what makes it work, right? I mean, what makes and we have some more people going through coaching right now for their third, fourth, time, and coming back again and again. One guy tomorrow is the CEO of a company who's coming back again, and he's going to be back with us in July. I mean, there's okay, so what's working? Obviously something is working. And so, at the end of the day, a lot of customers that come to us at the beginning, if my phone rings, they're like, oh, hey, so-and-so told me I should give you a call. What do you got for sales training? Right? What do you got for my, millennials? What do you got for leadership development? That's usually how, if somebody calls me, that's usually how it starts. It sounds something like that, right? So at the transactional layer, we're selling sales training, right? At the transactional layer, we're selling a leadership program. And that's, you sort of put that in your mind. You look at what we do and you put us in the buckets with all the other training companies. And so buying training is kind of like buying other kinds of training. It's just the way that you look at it. And then they get into the live event and they realize oh shit, this isn't just sales training. Right? This is mindset development. This is, me becoming the best version of myself so that I can sell more and be more present and have all the things, right? It's really, life coaching plus, a little bit of sales training in some cases. And so, that's really where now we've attached into the emotional layer. So you actually help that person be healthier, have a better relationship at home, be more clear, be more energetic throughout the day, get whatever it is that they want. Right? Everybody has their own individual desires when they come into our programs. And then you help them access that over the course of the next 90 days. They're fully bought in emotionally. And guess what? The business results almost always show up. So we have a different take, but I mean, obviously my hypothesis right now is what works is that we're able to tap into people's emotional layer and help them get what they really need, not what they just thought they showed up for.
Yeah. And what this kind of reminds me of too is if anybody has ever watched Simon Sinek's TED Talk about the golden circle,
Mm-hmm.
And he really talks about, there's three different perspectives that you can come at in a conversation about what your company is here for. And he kind of illustrates it as three consecutive circles, with the center circle being your why, the next layer being your how, and the farthest out being your what. And what often happens is most companies and most sellers, to be real honest, focus on the what and the how. What is it that I sell, whether it's a product or a service, and how do I do it? Do I have a special process? Is it, some of those value added things, or, how I'm going to deliver the service to you? But unfortunately, what and how have very little emotional tie, right? If you tell me what you sell, like for the most part, I'm like either thumbs up or thumbs down. Like, great.
Yeah.
Okay. I either need it or I don't. That's awesome. The how might resonate with me intellectually, right? Like if you have a interesting process for bringing this product to market, like that's cool. But where you really get that emotional tie is, why do I do this? Right.
Yeah.
So maybe your company has a really strong why, but also going back to where we started and asking questions about those fear, pain, and opportunity. If my why as a seller is to help my customer tackle those fears, tackle that pain, take advantage of those opportunities, like that's a strong emotional why.
Yeah.
So we'll put a link to that TED Talk in the show notes in case by some chance you haven't seen it yet. It is one of the most popular TED Talks out there. So I think a lot
Absolutely.
of people have, but I see that as kind of a connecting topic as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right there with you.
So as we kind of got a little more time here in the conversation, but as we start to wind this down, one of the things that I've really been seeing, so I'll illustrate this, and Mark, I'm kind of curious to get your feedback on it. So one of the things that I've been seeing a lot is where sellers are falling short. One is in asking the questions, right? So they don't even know what's important to the customer. But it's also in communicating how they can help them solve that problem back. And so the example that I think actually Wade shared with me one time that I just really appreciate is, this idea that I'd say, hey, Mark, give me $10 and I'm going to give you a $20 bill in return. Would you take that deal?
Yeah.
And every single time, right?
Yeah.
You give me 10, I give you 20 back.
It's a good
Sounds
return.
good. It's a very good return. But yet every single day we have customers who don't do that.
Yeah.
And then I have to start asking, like, why don't they do that? Right. And again, 10, 20, very simplistic, but in some cases, right, especially in our business, in some cases, they just don't have the $10, right? So your value might actually be in helping them from a risk management or a budgeting or cash flow or understanding their break even, like whatever that financial piece is, so that they can actually have the $10 in the first place to give you. But what I find more often than not is we do a really weak job of communicating where that $20 is going to come from. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like we tell them, oh yeah, we can help you get X return, but we don't really thoroughly paint the picture as to where that's going to show up. So is that you're going to make more money because whatever, like we'll stick in the ag realm, right? Like your crops are going to yield more, or is it that you're going to save money, right? So by investing here, it means you don't have to save or spend money over here? Or is it a time thing, right? If you spend this money, that $20 actually shows back up in time that will be saved, right? Whatever that is, and granted, you have to uncover that by asking all of those questions. But I'm finding that a lot of people are just not great at sort of painting, give me your $10 now, and here's how I'm going to help you $20 back.
Right.
And especially layer into that, I don't think it depends. It matters what business you're in. Customers tend to be pretty short-sighted. Like, what's the problem today that I've got to fix? Whereas when you're trying to get into that partnership level relationship, you're there to help them see the long-term return on that they're spending. So as we kind of think about that, I'm curious, what tips do you have, or how would you come at this to help people paint that better picture of where that customer can find that quote unquote theoretical
A
$20.
theoretical 20.
Yeah.
For me, it always comes back to the process that we use to try and understand what's important to them. Right. So it goes back to the beginning. We talk about asking all the questions, diving deep, and like, so what really are the pains, what really are the fears, and what really are the things? Like, what that will tell me is like, do I have somebody who's more like Mark, who, trusts easily, and like, if I like you, I probably trust you, and you tell me, I give you 10 today, and I'm going to have, $20 back by the end of the month. As long as I can cash flow without that $10 for the next 15 days, probably going to do it. Right. I might have somebody who's more analytical, such as my wife, and she's going to want to know, like, well, what the hell are you doing to, take my 10 and turn it into 20? Right. But the only way to know is to try and spend some time getting to know that person before you know how much of the picture you have to paint. If you take me into the process of like every little nuance and every little hoop that you're going to have to jump through in order to turn that 10 into 20, like, you lost me, man, because now it's like too much information. Okay. So I don't need as like bright and detailed of a story as some people would need. But some people do, right? So you have that more analytical minded person. You have that more, maybe you're going to do good with that money, right? And so you have that person who really cares about other people, right? They're more what we call the dove personality. And so you're going to tie into their best interest. Like, hey, you're going to get $20 back. I just need 10 for the next whatever, 15 days or 15 months, that matter. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to be helping people along the way. And, at the end, whatever you benefit, like, oh, cool. Like, that might be right. Or if they're more that what we call the driver personality, the red, the eagle, type personality, like, usually the less information, the better. Like, hey, listen up. We're all going to make money on this deal. You give me 10 today, in 15 days I'm giving you 20 back. Cool. All right, done. Like, usually it depends kind of on the analytical minded of that, direct person, but the less words, the better. And sometimes, like, people like stories and I certainly do. And I love to tell them. And so, you just kind of got to read into the personality of the person, right? The DISC assessment, DISC profile is usually one that people go back to. The one thing that I, DISC by and large is just kind of a horoscope, but it also does tell you a lot about like just where does that person fall in, what bucket does that person fall into, and it gives you some idea like what kind of a story and how do I use my words to share that with them. So that's my method, is just trying to get to understand the person as much as possible. If anything, I'm probably somebody who's an oversharer, and I'll go deeper into detail than I need to. So that's my watch out, is I'm usually sharing too much. And then if I get around somebody who's more analytical and they're going to punch a bunch of questions, like, frankly, I get annoyed. And so, then I have to like get more detailed to get the end. Like, here's the sheet. This is exactly how I'm going to do this for you. So that's my take, Amanda.
Yeah, I think those are all great thoughts. We even have that conversation around strength scope and communicating with others based on their strengths language. I think the biggest thing that has resonated in some of my conversations on this topic too is just remembering, and again, this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, but if we talk about, $10 and $20 as an analogy for ROI, remember that $20 is not actually always have to be money. It might be, hey, I'm letting you get more time with your kids by creating this more convenient service, or I'm saving you from, I work with a lot of people who are in the livestock industry. I'm saving you from having to, doctor sick animals later, because we're going to take care of them earlier on, so we don't get into that challenge, right? And so just getting away from the idea that it always is a monetary return, because it may or may not, right? And in some industries like ours, there's a lot of factors that go into whether you actually see a monetary return down the road. But there are other benefits that you can gain that show up in that emotional return on investment, that emotional value.
Yeah. Well, and what's really important to the person, right? That's the piece that you really want to, tie into those real emotional drivers. One of the things that I've started doing, like if I print out our P&L, this has been me just starting to rewire my mindset. I'm changing the word profit to freedom. I'm much more driven by freedom than I am by profit. Right. And so I will make better decisions in the essence of freedom than I will, for profit. So that's one little way to kind of look at it's for us, it's, freedom and loss, right? Freedom and not freedom, freedom and prison. It's the F&P. And so that's how I'm looking at that. I know, like, just take, like, get out of the ag world and go to, let's say, the nutrition world, the fitness world. How would you get somebody emotionally bought into working out? There's a real 10 and 20, like, you give me an hour today, right? I'm going to give you 5 years on the back end of your life. But maybe that's not that important, because you can't see that far in the future, and you don't know if you're going to get it anyway, because nobody can predict the future that way. Then okay, great. Then what would it be like if you didn't have to be huffing and puffing when you play with your kids after school? I literally just saw this on a Facebook post from a friend of mine the other day, who's on he's on his weight loss journey, and he has always been a big guy ever since I known him, but frankly was just tired of not being able to keep up with his little kids. They were running circles around him, and he couldn't do it. And he's young, younger than I am. And so that, what is the emotional buy-in? I will start to make shifts and changes when I realize, like, all I have to do is make this sacrifice today, or do this thing today, or put in this time and effort today. And, within a few weeks, I start to feel better, and I can actually keep up again. That's different, right? That feels different than that. So I like analogies. That's my favorite way to to draw stories, or to use stories, or use personal examples. But you got to do what works for you and for your personality. And sometimes that's laying out the numbers, sometimes it's being specific, sometimes it's looking at a process, whatever the case may be. But whatever it is to get to that emotional draw with somebody, really, really, really position your value at a whole deeper level, because then it becomes about something that's not just money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 questions as we wind this thing down. So one, I'm going to link to, you mentioned Brian Tracy's Psychology of Selling. I'm going to find that HBR article. We're going to post that in the show notes. What are, 2 or 3 other resources that you might recommend to somebody who's looking to, maybe they're new to selling, or maybe they're just looking to take their selling skills to the next level? What might you recommend?
Mm-hmm. So the number one book that probably has impacted me over time around business relationships is it's in our blog post for one of my top to read books, but Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. To this day is just one of those books that really teaches you how to systematically grow your network. And so when you have that network, I've did 3 conversations in the last 2 days with what I call super connectors, what Keith calls super connectors in his book, that, like, I know when I invest my time with these 3 people, like, they have access to a lot of relationships, which then saves me time to have to look at all those companies individually. Plus, they'll tell me about companies I don't know in order to be able to, find out who do I need to talk to in that organization, and this person may be able to make a referral, right? So it expedites my time. So who are the super connectors in your community? Something to dig into. So that's definitely one of the number one resources that I would recommend. And I would just any other podcast out there that maybe takes a little bit of a sales angle or around, mindset, specifically on selling, like just, Ryan Stewman's Hardcore Closer, Andy Frisella's MF CEO Project. Fair warning, like, if you've got soft ears, like, they're gonna use a lot of swear words, and so that's up to you. And I'm a little salt and pepper when it comes to that stuff, but these guys are hardcore. So they're good. Also, Gary Vaynerchuk talks a ton about providing value, right? So the Gary V, there's only like 460 some episodes of the Daily V. He has a podcast that you can listen to. A lot of his conversation is around providing value. Here's one thing we didn't get into today, Amanda, but one of the ways that, you have the ability to provide value into the lives of people that you're not even doing business with today through social media, right? So if you're, one of those livestock people that's listening to this, like, I ought to be learning from you and just seeing your passion for the industry by what you do through your snaps, through your Instagram, through your Facebook. Like, you should be doing selfie videos about how you're feeding your horses, assuming that's in alignment with what you're selling for your company. But that's a thing. Like, those of you in the, that listen to this, they're on the agronomy, the grain side, like we should be seeing some stuff about, with you doing some selfie videos out in the field this summer. That should be popping up on your Facebook. We should be seeing some of those 60-second snaps about, what's going on in the market. I'll never forget, like I got a snap or a text message from one of our customers one day who is a grain buyer, who literally just added Snapchat at the live event, found out that like 15 of her growers that she buys grain from were using Snapchat. Then the next week, the market finally ticked up like 15 cents and she put a snap of that on the screen, and then they called her. Right. So like just little things that tell your story. Don't be worried. Don't worry about being professional. Like, don't worry about being like super high production value or anything like that. Like that's all cool, but you don't have the budget for it. Let's be honest. And so, just use your phone and use your Snapchat and use a filter if you really want to. Okay. Like you can do filters. That's what they're there for. Use some alternate reality stuff that's built into your social tools, but that's a way that you can start to provide value. I mean, like I'm not super consistent. I don't probably hit one every day, but somewhere, in social media, almost every day I'm posting a quote or something of value, or just like, I've been doing this for 5 years, just pouring into other people's lives. And what's interesting now, 5 years later, like, lead generation has been pretty easy lately. We've had a lot of good stuff come in the pipeline, a lot of cool things come in our direction. So that is, you can use those tools, and that is as much about selling, as the actual sales process itself, like literally adding value into the relationship before you ever get there. And here's what I found is when I go into selling situations where somebody brings me in because of something that we do in social, whether it's the podcast or whether it's Facebook or whatever, we are automatically in partnership level conversations. We skip all the formality. We skip all the bullshit. We go right to like what's real. And partly because I communicate that about myself. And so the expectation is already there. Whereas in a normal sales setting, you walk in cold or they had never seen you. They don't have a clue who you are. Then, we don't, I have to work to work that much harder in that sales conversation. I'm inherently lazy, so I'm always trying to find better ways to get it done. So that's that's what I'm after. Yeah, fun fact about Mark: he's inherently lazy. He has to make himself work hard. Whatever. I like to take risk and build teams. That's my new way of getting shit done. That's like my passion right now.
Awesome. Lots of good stuff here today. Any final thoughts or closing ideas?
So this will be my final thought. To be able to go out and position your value, not just your product and services value, but your value in the marketplace has got to be your play. The market is shifting. Everything is changing, particularly in, I know the vast majority of our listener base is in agribusiness. Our industry is going to look really, really different in 5 to 10 years. So the ones who are going to win, the ones who aren't going to have to worry when all the big changes come at your company or in your sector of the industry, are going to be the ones who are adding the most value to the marketplace, even when they don't have to. Okay. So most people are reacting to what the boss is saying that they got to do or what the new initiative is in the company. Stop doing that shit. Like, find a way to make it a habit to love doing it every day. So get out there, start adding more and more value, find a way to do it. Just test different questions, see what works for you, innovate, try something new. Like, don't just do what I tell you to do. Like, find other things that might work for you and let that be your marketable differentiation. But find ways to position your value, because then no matter where the chips fall, like, you're going to be okay. And you won't be just surviving. You'll be that much closer to being able to thrive. And I think that we know that survival's dead and it's our time to thrive, and we should all go get that. Those are my last thoughts. Other than that, there's a ton of other stuff, not only about value positioning and other things, but we've got, what are we up to? Almost 60 episodes on the podcast now.
This is episode 60.
Episode 60 right now. So there's 59 other episodes that you can go listen to, packed with value. And Amanda's done a great job lately of incorporating other people into the mix, because we just know there's so much knowledge within our team and beyond our team that we need to harness all that and get that in here for you. So please go listen to those. Go over to the website. We've got a ton of blog posts. We've got other resources, our book recommendations. All the things are over there at markjewelltraining.com. So go have a look around over there at markjewelltraining.com. You can download the podcast in iTunes. You can listen to it directly from the website. There's literally no excuse for that one. So get all those episodes if this happens to be your first one. So with that, that's all I have.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. I hope some people check it out. And thanks, Mark, for being back on. It's been a little while since we've recorded.
I skipped like the last eight episodes and I just kind of stepped out of the way and let you guys handle it. But we got a few more on the calendar that you and I are going to be recording coming up. And the other thing, I like one last plug. July, was it 25th and 26th? Is that the Thriving Leader? We have an event coming up. Yeah, we've got an event coming up at the end of July. If you've not been to a live event, if you want to come back and go to another one, this might be a really good opportunity. You're going to get to go through with a bunch of other people, probably doing this for the first time, and get to have a look at what this looks like.
Yep. And I can confirm July 25th and 26th.
There it is. I'm on top of my game today.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool.
All righty.
We'll see you next time. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it helps other people find the show. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjewelltraining.com. That's Jewel with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewell Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.